my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Shelf Stories and the One Stop Co-op Shop. I have here two gents from across the pond. I'm here in America, Connecticut. These two gentlemen are coming at you from Great Britain. I think that's what you call it now, right? England something.
We are both England.
The most hated nation, I think, is what we call
it. So they have joined me. It is 10:30 at night over there, so I am not going to waste a lot of time with the introduction. First of all, I would like to introduce the man on the bottom who has a chess set back there. Yes, this is a solo gaming show. He is willing to show you how much he loves solo by showing you his chess. You probably recognize him from his channel, Ricky Royal, the Box of Delights channel. This is the man himself, Richard Wilkins, aka Ricky Royal.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
All right. A multi-time guest of my old podcast, Every Night is Game Night, so always welcome back on the show. Speaking of multi-time guests, we've had this man has been on to preview a lot of his games. He is a publisher. He is the head of Hall or Nothing Productions. He is also the host of the Board Shitless podcast, and general all-around good chap. He is Tristan Hall. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Great to speak to you again, Jason. And brilliant to have Richard on as well. Get excited.
This is my COVID cure right here. Having these conversations. You guys saw Top 100 solo. That was like, that got me through. Like when I did Top 200, I know, but we're just talking here. So, well, actually, I'll introduce a topic. So first, we're going to talk about Tristan's game, which is Veilwraith. We're going to talk about Ricky's game, which is Renegade, which just came out a couple years ago. We have an update on that, and then we have a design quote unquote topic. So just to kind of lay the groundwork of what we're officially going to cover, but I want to catch up. First of all, I want to catch up with what you guys are up to. And from my perspective, so you guys know what I've been up to. I've been up to, starting a YouTube channel, and these videos and like the 4 video we did with the top 200 and a couple other conversations, they are absolutely getting me through COVID. Like I can't even, and it's actually better than the podcast. Like I just like seeing people's faces. Like they don't get as much clicks because YouTube is weird with like conversations. You can't like skip through them, and they give you ads right in the middle of somebody's sentence. No one wants to do it, but at least I can see people's faces. So I like the multi-person setup too. So that's what I've been up to. Maybe you guys can talk to us about what you guys been up to for COVID across the pond.
I did catch your top 200 countdown video, actually. It was really lovely to watch and see Kevin and the other guys as well. And like you say, it's a distraction away from all this mess.
And it came right in the middle of our election. So I got a lot of messages going, thank you for giving me a distraction.
It was great to watch. It was a great dynamic as well. So I think Liz and Kevin had more of a similar taste at times. And then yourself, Michael, had different tastes at other times. And that's one of the things that I think that top 200 shows is how diverse solo gaming has become. And there is something for everybody. And,
you were the originator of the top 100 solo. You did that list way before the People's Choice, because I remember looking at it when I first broke in, and some of the games in the bottom were a little rough.
Yeah. That was probably every game I owned.
Yeah.
It started out as a top 2.
I just had to own it to make it on the list. That was
right. So we'll start with Tristan. What have you been up to during this COVID transition over here?
I tend to be obsessive about whatever it is I'm doing. So if it's playing, I'll play something, and deep dive into it. And since I had my office put into place this year for the first time, I've got a space where I can play games and stuff. I've been getting into the games that I couldn't physically put out in our old house, like Shadows of Brimstone, which is like a massive table eater. Right. And I managed to assemble all of the miniatures from all of the massive minecart pledge and everything. So they're all out on display. And in terms of games, like what I'm playing at the moment is guided by either what I want to do solo or what me and my little boy will play. And he loves like miniatures games like Zombicide and stuff like that. So that's been like the play side of it. But actually I've not really had much time to play because most of it's been work stuff related. I mean, which, I make games, so it's kind of still play anyway.
Yeah.
But at the moment, like everything's been thrown out of whack because of COVID and everything else, and delays have occurred on Veilwraith, which is my latest game. Most of them are down to me, actually. Most of the delays because I've been having talks with the factory to try and get the game as best it can be, basically. But I've taken that opportunity to really carry on working on the game itself and honing it and getting all of the boring administrative stuff behind the scenes set up, the logistics and shipping and all of that kind of nonsense. So it's been pretty full tilt actually recently, just working and trying to keep all the social media channels going and the comments and replying to emails. And we've had sort of we've always had like steady orders, never like, blitzes. And of course, because there's no conventions this year, we've kind of we've bought loads of extra stock, which normally we'd be able to clear down at conventions and stuff. And now we're trying to find ways to get it out through other distribution channels. And God, I'm boring myself with this. But, yeah, working hard, working late, but getting the new house in order and finding as much time to play as possible. And,
I mean, it's heartening to know, because there was when it first hit, right? In what was it, March, April, May, like just everything shuts down, everything stopped. Like China was shut down, like in February, March, you just didn't get anything. So now I'm starting to get like the Kickstarter updates for stuff I backed 2 years ago. And it's like, ooh, I forgot I backed that. So it's actually exciting to know, like on the logistics side, things seem to be kicking up, even, as things kind of work out. So that's good to hear. It really is.
Definitely. We were lucky with, oh, sorry, Rich.
No, I was just going to say, how long ago was the Veilwraith Kickstarter? How long has it been now?
I'll probably have to double check that. Was it April this year?
Mm-hmm. Because I know it was a finished game then, because I previewed it for you. And one thing that surprises me is with you, Tristan, is you'll just keep perfecting it. So have you found, when you keep changing things and saying this could be better, this could be better, have you found that because things have slowed a little bit, what we call, as a designer, I call it at the altar syndrome. You think you've finished, but you're there, but you just keep tweaking and you keep tweaking. Have you found that this has prolonged your perfectionism a little bit?
Definitely. There's a fantastic quote from the movie director David Fincher, who said that art is never finished, it's only abandoned. And he was probably paraphrasing somebody else. And I 100% agreed with that. So every single day of delay on any of my projects means tinkering. And that means adding stuff in or clarifying stuff. Literally, even tonight, I've got Veilwraith set up here. I was playing vignette number 16 again, and I found like a little, if I capitalize one word, it will really help emphasize it and it will tie into the rule book more. So I'm going to go back and change that, and just all of those tiny little minutiae that really bugs me, or even still picking up on typos and things. But and of course your suggestions, Ricky, which have been fantastic. He's been playing with the pre-production copy and spotted a couple of things here and there, like either rules clarifications that could be tidied up. And for me now, specifically with, for example, Gloom of Kilforth, which is going into its 4th print run next year, each time, if there's, hey, there it is. If there's any
in the middle of filming a review for the Dice Tower, I was waiting for you to mention
it. Brilliant, that's good. Yeah, so like if someone asks a rules question on Board Game Geek, and perhaps the ruling in the rule book could be, 1% clearer, then I will definitely go back and change it. And I see rule books as like a living document, that can be tweaked. And I don't have the guts to say that any of my games are perfect. They could always, certainly the rule books could always be tidier and cleaner, and you can clarify card text to make game rules and mechanics clearer, or better. So yeah, I always consider if there's a way that I can improve something, I'll do it. And having delays on a project like Veilwraith has let me really sort of deep dive into that, and even going so far as adding icons for all the different card types, which didn't exist previously. Just now, if you're fanning through the cards, if you're setting up the game for another game or whatever, and you just want to quickly get to memories or keys, or these are different card types in the game. They've got a little icon now, so it's just it just helps you just get there so much faster. And so little things like that are just elevate it, just keep elevating it, and hopefully I'm not over tinkering. And it's not just going to become an absolute overabundance of iconography and stuff. But yeah, no, I think it's a great opportunity to just revisit it. And also, as it happens, because I've been preoccupied with administrative stuff, I've really got back into playing the game again and sort of falling back in love with the game design, because I think, as you mentioned earlier, it's a few years old now. And I don't know if you guys know, back in the day, it was going to be
So
Manic
actually, we
Miner.
should just probably step back and just get into what this. We're talking all about it, but I don't think people really know what it is. So we'll get back to Ricky in a second. Everything that you're doing, we got plenty of time. So actually, let's just take a step back and tell the peoples what Veilwraith is.
Okay, so Veilwraith is a card game primarily designed for a solo player. It takes place after the end of the world, and an extinction event has occurred that's wiped out all life in this fantasy world. It's basically set after Gloom of Kilforth. Basically, if you imagine the heroes in Gloom of Kilforth are fighting back an evil tide of gloom that's destroying the land and these ancient beings that are causing the gloom to spread. And Gloom of Kilforth gives you that moment of hope where the heroes can destroy the bad guys and win. So Veilwraith imagines they haven't won. They've lost. All the heroes have been wiped out. The demons have won. The land has been engulfed in gloom, and all the colour and life and love has been stolen from the planet. And so by an impossible twist of fate, you are an ethereal being sent back to undo the wrongs and to bring life and colour back into this empty and blistered broken world. So how that works in terms of the game, it's a card game, and in the game you kind of have 5 scenarios that you're working through as like a mini campaign. With the expansion, you have another 15 scenarios. So you could have like a 20 scenario campaign that's all linked together. And you are this sort of strange being who's going back and interacting with the memories of the world that's gone before. So it's definitely my most abstract game in terms of, like, the theme is quite sort of out there. It's a little bit wacky, like a post-apocalyptic type of ghost world. But mechanically, it's very different from anything else I've done. And it was designed primarily, as I said, as a solo game. But as I was playing it with the family, we realized how quickly we would be able to turn it into a multiplayer game. So you can play it cooperatively or competitively, but each person would require their own copy of the game. And you'd either be racing against each other to be the first Veilwraith to complete each scenario, or working cooperatively for you all to beat it together, kind of thing. But yeah, it's got some interesting mechanics that I've been flirting with and really enjoying it. For me, it's quite an addictive sort of gameplay, and it's one where, win or lose, you want to just set it back up again quite quickly.
And check out Ricky Royal Box of Delight channel. You have plenty of videos. Like, you don't have just one. I think you have and it's funny to watch it on different stages of the development. So you have the one from the Kickstarter, and you have one for the pre-production. And Ricky's never shy in terms of making comments about, like, oh, this will change, and there's this.
Ricky's done a better job of talking about the changes than I have. Sorry, go on.
The artwork's still very Kilforth, isn't it? Because you're tying into the same
yeah, it's one of the same.
It's all black and white, yeah?
Correct, yeah. So all of the life and colour has been sucked out of the world. So the whole game, the box, the rule book and everything is all monochrome. Which, again, given how colourful and sort of vibrant the Kilforth games are, I've wanted a really distinctly different visual aesthetic, and quite a sort of dark, world. And so Jose Del Nido is one of the lead artists on that, and he's just got such a brilliant style that, yeah, it's just, I think it looks really distinctly different and interesting.
Yeah.
Although some people hate black and white art, so who knows?
It's one of my favorite cards from the base set, the scary clown.
Yeah.
If you're listening on the podcast version of the One Stop Co-op Shop, Ricky is having a great time flipping through all of this art. Showed us the clown from It, Pennyworth over there. So I guess mechanism-wise, what would we equate this to? Because we've had a couple of solo journey card games. I think of Unbroken in particular. Like Friday in its own way is kind of like this kind of progressive thing. So, like, what would you, like, I guess, give the people a sense for, like, what is this like mechanically? Okay,
so simplistically speaking, you're basically, you have your own deck of.
How do I take my genius and boil it down?
You should have been prepared for this question.
I should have done some research on this game. Who designed this game?
Tristan's like, what? I can't just explain the theme and you're not in love? What?
I'm just hoping he doesn't ask the same question for Renegade.
People know Renegade.
I can't wait till we get to that. Could you ask him first? It's so basically, yes. You as the Veilwraith, you have you're equipped with the memories of the world that's gone before. You have a deck of memories, and memories can be of hope or love or strength, and you use these memories to tackle the threats that are still hanging around this world. So there are different types of threats that you'll come across. There's a threat deck that will each turn throw a card at you, and you'll use your memory cards to try and overcome it, whatever that threat is. And it could be a ghost, a deja, we call them, that are like these trapped spirits who are left behind because they had an attachment to the world, or they were murdered, or they have some kind of tie to this broken world. Or there are anima, which are evil, malicious demons and beasts and things that are actually sent to track you down and destroy you by the overlord that's ruined and destroyed the world. And so mechanically how that breaks down is you have 3 different ways you can interact with each threat that comes out of the threat deck. You can explore, you can influence it, or you can fight it. And you have a track of actions, explore, fight, and influence. And each of those actions is under a number, 1, 2, or 3. So at any given point, one of your actions will be in the 3 spot and one will be in the 1 spot. So if your fight is in the 3 spot and you attack a 3 fight threat, you destroy it and you beat the threat, and you move your fight action to the bottom of the row. So basically it pushes the other 2 actions up. So your fight is now at 1 and the other actions are now at 2 and 3. So you have this sort of, you can basically, as this Veilwraith, you're emphasizing on one particular focus each round, whether that's fight, influence, or explore. But it's not as simple as that, because every threat will come out. It might have 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 fight or influence or whatever. And every single threat in the game has a different ability, which will mess with you in some way. You have a life track, which like a spirit dial. If you lose 20 life, you lose the game. And any threat that you don't overcome in one round will damage you at the end of that round. So you use your memory cards to interact with threats in different ways. You can ignore certain threats, or you can boost your abilities, or you can add power tokens to your abilities, which increase the numbers. You can combine memory cards together by discarding a bunch of them to add power to one specific action. And it's quite
you can, specialize one way and rely on that specialization for that particular thing. And then if you get something that requires a lot of influence, you can kind of bump that temporarily because it bleeds against your specialization. So you kind of bounce back and forth. When I was watching Ricky's playthrough, I'm like, well, okay, I could feel that. My DM brain got tickled because, when I would DM, I never wanted my group to do one thing. I wanted them to fight. I wanted them to explore. Fight, explore, interact are the 3 pillars of good role playing. And for them it was fight, fight, and fight. So it's so I'm like, no, don't fight this thing.
Kill the monsters, get the treasure.
That thing is level 20. You're level 5. Just talk to
it. Negotiate.
And well, yes, it's very much a campaign game, right, Tristan? So I was playing this afternoon and I'm on, you said you were testing 16, I was playing vignette 4. And you start the game with 5 ribbons, which is your health or how many chances you get, right? So I just lost on vignette 4 again. So I'm down to 3 ribbons right now. So not great. And it's not quite deck building, it's not quite deck construction. You start with a basic deck, and then between vignettes, they play relatively quickly, right? You can upgrade one card. Sometimes the success in a vignette lets you upgrade another card. So in between games, you've got that little idea of, you just change 1 or 2 cards. So you're not having all that pain of constructing a deck, which sometimes can be quite, a game in itself. It's 1 or 2 cards, but then the campaign continues, right? So how many vignettes is the whole story with you once you add the expansion?
So yeah, there's 20 vignettes altogether, and it's really, as you say, it's sort of a deliberately slowed right down deck building, where you literally, your deck of 20 memories, you change 1 card after each game. You can remove 1 card and you can add a new, better, improved card. And that definitely was inspired by me coming back to games like Lord of the Rings, the card game, after a few years of not playing it and loving the game and playing the later scenarios and just getting rinsed, just getting absolutely mullered because I hadn't moved on with all of the new deck builds that had come out and stuff. And then I'm like, I know a lot of people really love deck construction, and that's half the game, is like getting your Magic the Gathering deck together to go and, you know, waste your mates and stuff. But I also think that there's a flip side to that for people like me who perhaps don't have, excuse me, as much time or ability or enthusiasm.
I don't want to do that.
Interest,
Just give me a deck and go.
Yeah, exactly. Give me a deck and go. And certainly, like with 1066, my other games, the history games, you literally just shuffle the deck and off you go. And so with Veilwraith, I wanted that barrier to entry to be so low that the first time you play it, straight away, you play the game and then you're like, okay, cool. So there was quite a few fight threats in that vignette. I'm going to increase my fight card, so I'll just swap out a fight card for a better fight card. And then the next vignette, you'll play that and you'll be like, oh, I should have gone for influence, I'll get another influence card, kind of thing, you know. And then you'll be like, oh, this one lets me draw 2 memories instead of 1, you know. And all of a sudden these different abilities start to emerge, and you'll find your own personal value. Speaking to some of the playtesters, they're like, yeah, I like a fight build, or I like just drawing cards and just getting all the cards that give me more cards, kind of thing. And so initially, if you're on vignette 4, Ricky, then you've had basically 4 upgrades ish. By 20, you know, by the last bit, you'll have changed your deck 20 times. And so the variables by the time you get to that point are absolutely huge. And so what I'm still trying to do at this stage is make sure that it's still tight as possible when you get to that. And you don't, you can't just walk over the 20th scenario. Like, my deck is so unbelievably, you know, killer now. Like, the game can't stop me. Or, you know, the flip side where you're just like, oh, I've upgraded my deck 20 times, or I'm getting murdered every single time. So it's a real fine line to tread, but it's been really fun, a fun sort of design exercise to try and, you know, tighten the nuts and bolts of that. And I think probably spinning out over 20 scenarios was like probably a silly idea. Maybe I should have just stuck to 10, you know.
You've done that, but you didn't really need to. It's like, I guess one parallel is like Arkham Horror LCG, where you're doing the similar thing. The difference with Veilwraith is, you know, in Arkham Horror, you'll do a scenario, you'll change some cards, and whether you win or lose, you move on. But with Veilwraith, you can't move on until you've succeeded. And that was, I guess, is a dangerous thing, because you might say, well, I've got to play the same scenario again. But what you've done also, what you can tell people, is you've layered in lots of variability. So you'll play the scenario, but the setup for the scenario is going to be different each time you play, which is really neat. So that's really cool. So I know I'm going to play Vignette 4 again, but I don't know what cards are going to come out, what threats I'm going to face. I kind of know, but I don't know if there'll be, you know, there's going to be variability through them, and the order they come out and everything else. So that's really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety within the same card types. So if you have a scenario that has, say, 2 wraiths or something, or 2 goblins, then there might be 4 goblin cards, and they're all different. You know, their stats are all slightly different. You might get the 2 hardest ones, or you might get the 2 easiest ones, or you might get the 1 hardest one. And then there's each threat deck is made up of 30 cards. So there's a big variety in threats, but you will know which foes you're up against. And some of the vignettes are definitely designed to wrong foot you. So hopefully you'll get some of the later ones and be like, what? You know, I was completely unprepared for that, but now it's beating me. I know how to go back in. Whereas there are certain games, you mentioned Arkham Horror LCG. I've played a few of those scenarios where I'm just like, I don't even know how I could have done any better, you know. Like, it would take me like some advanced study class to figure out how to get past that scenario with the build that I had, kind of thing.
I think you can get away with like making people play again if it's fast. You know,
if it's fast,
like you fast it, you know, you're done in, like, if it's fast, not just the gameplay, but like resetting up. Like, you know, I think the thing people got frustrated with, like a game like Gloomhaven, was you're playing the whole thing, you lose, now you gotta set everything up, and it takes another hour plus to kind of move through it. And that was our last game of the thing, so I have to break it down. But people were like, nah, I'm not doing that. Yeah, I'm just gonna win. We'll just say we won.
Well, no, I get that, and Gloomhaven specifically, I was playing with my son, and he kind of bowed out after we replayed a scenario 3 times to try and get the treasure chest, you know, and because if you get that treasure chest, at least you get the And it was just like, I've had enough. And I was like, yeah. But and I get that because, as you say, it takes a couple of hours to play through. So luckily with Veilwraith, it's 20 or 30 minutes per scenario, unless you really got analysis paralysis. But also there is a rule in the rule book to skip to a scenario. So if you let's say if scenario 14 or something is kicking your ass, you can play it outside of a campaign. You can just jump straight to it, upgrade your deck to take it on, work out how to beat it, and then go back and play the campaign. And when you get to it, you'll be more prepared for it next time. So I was really conscious of somebody getting that far into the game. We were like, no, why did I lose now? And you could cheat it a little bit and give yourself more ribbons and stuff, but the game does reward you with those as you go on. So.
Well, you can do that solo because you're not cheating anyone.
Nobody's watching. nobody's going to tell.
No one's ever watching.
So that is Veilwraith. It was kickstarted back in earlier 2020. When everything kind of happened. So, I think the community really stepped up. People were afraid. It's like, okay, should I launch? This is what's people have lost their jobs. What's going to happen? But I think the community really took it as a chance to kind of come together. Those projects that launched at that time, people have a lot of fondness for because it gave them a distraction and it gave them something to look forward to. So the community stepped up, funded it, and, you are working on getting it out there. We are going to hopefully look forward to it in, I guess, 2021.
Yeah, Q1 2021. We could have rushed it out at the end of this year, but there was an opportunity to make a few, I think, pretty important upgrades and quality component upgrades. So yeah, Q1 2021.
Definitely look out for that one. All right, so we are going to get back to my friend over here who we got a little swept up in the Hall of Nothing thing. But I definitely want to get back to my friend who has been busy as well.
I love talking to Tristan and all designers and publishers, and it's always interesting to hear too what publishers and designers play as well. So it was good to know that. That's
absolutely.
What do you play with? What do you play with your kids, Tristan? What do you play?
So my boy loves like the miniatures games and stuff. So Zombicide and Shadows of Brimstone and things where you can kill stuff and level up and things like that. We do play some. If I can rope Francesca into joining us, if she's not too busy, then we'll play something like Seven Wonders or something a bit more family orientated, or the Escape the Dark Castle. If it's bedtime and he just wants a quick 20-minute game to extend that bedtime period, and he knows he can wheedle something out of me, and Escape the Dark Castle fulfills that sort of 20-minute window really nicely. So I'm just looking around at the shelves now. Family games.
Yeah,
Flashpoint.
My daughter is 5. She's still playing the Enchanted Cupcake Party game. I can't get her past that.
How old is she, Jason?
She's 5.
5. Yeah, we used to play. It was this little. What was it called? The little dinosaurs that used to race around the track. What was it called? Dino Race. Of course. That's
what it says on the tin.
Yeah, exactly. That was a super little game. We used to love that. Yeah.
Nice. So what you been up to? Last couple of months. I mean, you post a lot. The channel is, it does get some stuff out there. A lot of your designs are out there. People are really complimentary of the PAX Premier design because that was a big popular game in 2020. So what have you been up to in this land of COVID?
Yeah. There's more time to be at home and do this stuff for sure. But PAX Premier Second Edition. Yeah, that was a highlight of last year.
Absolutely.
And this year it's been really well received. I mean, Cole and Drew from Renegade, they've done a super job with the game. Drew did most of the development on the solo rules with me, so it was really cool to work with Drew. And I know those guys are working on John Company as well, so we've been having a little bit of a chat back and forth. Not sure at the moment how much they want me to help, but we're talking about possibly helping with that. Renegade is obviously being rebranded next year, maybe. I still don't have dates. So that's with Tabletop Tycoon, who picked it up from Victory Point Games. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, when was that now? Beginning of this year's gone so fast. It might have even been last year. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was last year. It was definitely last year. It was actually, but may have been like almost. We're getting to 2 years at this point.
Wow.
because I remember talking about it last year. So we could talk about Renegade at this point. So Renegade has been on a journey.
It has, yeah.
It really has been on a journey. I mean, if you go on the Box of Delights website, there's all designer diaries from the whole inception. We're talking a long time ago. It was picked up by Victory Point Games, which is at the time, it hadn't been purchased by Starling yet. They were still printing the boxes with the soot and the laser cut and all that kind of stuff. But Victory Points was known for solo, and Ricky Royal is known for solo, so it was a match made in heaven, right? And then, so it's published, and then in the midstream, it gets Victory Points get picked up by Starling. Oh no! Well, Tabletop Tycoon, and the Starling is another imprint. So now Victory Points in this house. So it's like, okay, what's going on? Renegade gets a beautiful printing, which is right next to, before launching the podcast or listening to the podcast, Ricky is sitting there right next to his game, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. So yeah, this was pre-Tabletop Tycoon days. So yeah, when this was done.
And Tristan has this copy as well.
Oh, well done.
Fans. And mine is right over there in case you can't see it. I gotta check that out. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so and that's where we left off. You were on the show. You did preview. We did a review of it. We liked it. And since then, it's been a real adventure. So I wanted to kind of catch up and see where Renegade is going.
Yeah, so I think we first talked about it in 2017 on Every Night is Game Night. Yeah, that was, golly, yeah, it does fly by, and it was kickstarted then. And the first copy that got made was the Victory Point Games, the laser cut sooty tokens, and I still have that copy with the little napkin. The
napkin.
All that. So that, but it never got released that way. And at the time they were doing these more like these gold banner type releases. So Renegade went straight in there because it was a Kickstarter. They were kind of changing their model, Victory Point Games, and yeah, they got acquired. We were ready. We've done the base game, and we did 2 small expansion packs. Like the little ones they were doing for Nemo's War as well. These like little spoiled small pack expansions. And we've done 2 more. So 2 got published, and then we had expansions 3 and 4 designed, artwork done, ready to go out. And that would have been February 2019. I think we were looking to do it. But yeah, then it all got hooked up in the acquisition by Jan Yarrington and Tabletop Tycoon. So yeah, they have Sparkworks and Starling Games. People know Everdell, which has been a big success for them. And yeah, then this year happened, so everything slowed down, and then it was kind of forced upon us that we had to change the name of the game. So I'm kind of in the midst of that too. I've not decided, or we've not decided, what name the game is going to be published as next time. But
so let's just say there was a letter sent.
Yes.
This was not a choice. This was a kind of thing. I mean, it's just welcome to the gaming industry. A lot of stuff goes up on Haynes. I don't want to like kind of dredge up like dirt or anything, but a letter was sent. This is not your choice.
No. It's but it's an opportunity. So you look on the bright side. It's an opportunity. So
rebranding.
It's really hard as a publisher and as a designer too, because Tristan's in a fortunate position. You make your own destiny, but as a designer, when you sell a game to a publisher, your name is on the box, but ultimately you don't hold the purse strings and you don't make the decisions. But so you have an enviable position, but it's a risky position that you put yourself in, Tristan. So and for that, envious again.
Double-edged sword.
Yes, indeed. But
yes, it is.
That works for me. I mean, this is just a hobby for me, and this is this game is a vanity project more than anything for me. And I have the luxury to be able to make games that I want to play rather than want to make a profit. But I know publishers will want to make it a successful game. But the flip side to that is, and one of the good things about joining up with Victory Point Games is through Box of Delights, it opened that door to talking to Alan Emmerich and they knowing me and me knowing their games and me being able to say, this is a game you'll like, you know. And I know Dan the Arrington and Tabletop Tycoon like it too, and they give me a lot of freedom to influence them as much as I can. So if I don't like something, I feel confident that they won't pursue it, you know. So if I say, so it's like I get the final sign off. It feels like they give me a lot of respect that way, which is wonderful. I mean, the truth is they'll say, you know, Ricky, if you want to walk away and leave it to us, feel free. But if you want to be involved as much as you want to be. But that's what it's about for me. It's about being involved, and because it's a passion. So it's that whole process is so
in some
enjoyable.
way you got lucky, because I mean they could have, that like Victor Point could have been acquired by a company and just said, you know, we're not doing anything with this. We're just going to sit on this, and it just kind of disappears into this kind of like IP development hell. And, you know, I was, you know, when I first heard about it, I'm like, oh man, what's going to happen to me? You know, poor Ricky. But, you know, it sounds like they believe in the product and they're going to rebrand. Do we have a direction on the rebranding yet, or still?
No. I mean, it's the same game. I mean, the reason why, you know, when the acquisition happened, obviously as a designer, I mean, I could have picked up the design and walked away, but of course I don't own the rights to the artwork and the game itself, just the design. So, I mean, one of the reasons why I want to stick with them is also because I want to continue with the same artwork, the same game, and make it the same game. I don't want to just pick up my bat and ball and walk away, you know. This is about, I'm a gamer, and I know that if I bought this game, I'd want it to continue. But it's hard. I don't know. It's been so long. Do they have the capacity to continue? I don't know. Will it be a success? I don't know. So, you know, they have to trust, and I have to, that I can make it interesting enough, and that the game will stand up enough. So, but yes, they're very committed to it. They've got a developer on board. We've been working on stuff, and like I was saying, like Tristan was saying, the longer things are delayed, the more time you spend with it, you do keep tweaking. So although expansion packs 3 and 4, I said, were ready back February 2019, they just keep evolving because it's you never deliver a final product. It's always, you're always tweaking it. And amongst other things, I keep playing it. I pick it up every now and again and think, I'm bored of that bit. Let's change it, you know. Because I'm a player as well as a designer of it. So yeah, they're in the process of designing. I mean, one thing that people struggled with a little bit with this game was the rulebook. So I know they're going to put a lot of focus on the rulebook. I mean, I always wanted it to be. I mean, one of my design checklist items was, if I was a person who could only afford to buy one game, I'd want it to be this game. So I built it as to be something that you had to play again and again and again. And it wasn't like a game you could just pick up and play out of the box, and then you play it 20 times and then put it away and move on to the next game. I wanted it to be the one game that you needed to have. So I want to put tons of stuff in it, and it had to be a game you had to spend a lot of time with. And it was a risky strategy because I always knew it was not going to be a popular game with reviewers, because reviewers don't have that time, right? I know a lot of reviewers have picked it up and just gone, I'm not even playing this thing. I can't read that rulebook. I can't learn the terms. I can't, and then they're just giving up straight away, you know. But that's fine. I didn't make it for reviewers. I made it for players, and so it's a game that not everyone will love, but it's a game that I love, and that's what I wanted it to be. So yeah, we're doing more stuff. I'm hoping it will still be compatible with First Edition, but I don't know, and that's we'll have to see what ends up. I mean, this is the thing with the name change. The only thing that's got the name on it is the box and the rulebook, so it's no big deal, right? The components.
Yeah, you're not changing like the cube upload and all that jargon, which we've spoken about before, Ricky.
Yes. So don't be afraid. Yeah, I keep saying to people, don't be afraid of the jargon. Just say red and yellow and blue and green.
But it's right there on the player aid. The jargon is in your face.
So yeah. So and one of the things I've been playing recently is Jaws of the Lion, And it's strange. Every time you play, you always I take a little bit away. And I know when people picked up Renegade, they said that they found lots of influences in there, like, you know, it's like Pandemic or it's like Mage Knight, and wonderful comparisons for me. But one of the things that I've enjoyed with Jaws of the Lion is the way they designed it's a complicated game, but it's not complicated to learn, because they did this introduction and made it like you start simple and then you layer in more and more complexity. So the luxury of time has allowed me to take that idea, and I've been building scenarios for Renegade that do the same sort of thing. So I'm trying to create these missions that start you off with real simple stuff and then just layer the rules in on top of each other. So I've been developing a lot of that recently with the developers at Tabletop Tycoon, just to try and break that barrier to entry that I knew existed. So yeah, that should be cool. I mean, again, it's going to be one of those things where you don't discover the whole game until you've played it lots. But that's okay. That still ticks the box.
Although what I will say is this was like right when the Kickstarter was happening, and because I took the sooty copy to my local library to kind of get it in front of people. And I still remember this, and they were new to the game, hadn't been done, you know, they were playing, you know, whatever scenario, the basic scenario. And one of the people there just like was sat down. It's like, oh, this is okay. Oh my God, what's happening here? And then by the end, they were the green player, and they had this massive Nova turn where they had nodes all over the place, and they were like trailing the little, like the spark thing. Like he like trailed it across like all the entire board, and people were like, wow, you did that whole thing in one turn. You know? So, I mean, I think like it does a decent job of, you know, like it throws a lot of you at once, but like in the game, you'll figure it out, and you'll be able to kind of do something Nova-y at the end. Although, and I'm thinking of Michael Kelly in particular, you know, One Stop Co-op Shop, you know, my confrere over here, who says about Renegade, the end game can be a little bit, you know, like I'm done with the game. Like, and I've accomplished the mission before I've actually reached the final round, and then I kind of play it out anyway. So I wonder if you just very briefly wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, so it is a game that you survive to the end and then you win. So it has been, it can be a little anticlimactic in that respect. So yeah, I've been listening, and so with one of the expansion packs, which people have been downloading and playing on a print and play, though it has evolved quite a lot, I introduced an endgame boss, and since then I've got about 5 more. So when you get, so the Renegade plays in cycles. I shouldn't call it Renegade. I think I'm not even allowed to say Renegade anymore, so I must stop. This game here, the one in the blue box, if you go to my website.
The game formerly known as Renegade.
Yeah, it's my website. I've removed the name from my website now, so so you might see me dropping hints as to what it might become. But anyway, what I was trying to say was, in the game you play through cycles, copper, silver, gold, so they get harder. What I want to introduce with this new version, and I don't know if it will be part of the base game or the expansion yet, so that's a marketing decision, is an end game boss. You know, like in a computer game, right? You get through the levels and then you've got to fight the end game boss. So you're on a computer, you've got to fight the end game boss. So you get through copper, silver, gold, and then the big boss arrives. So it'll be one of Mother's minions will land on the network. So for example, one's called Tsunami. So when Tsunami hits, smashes down into the middle of the network, creates this tsunami event that pushes a tidal wave of badness across the network, destroys what you've built, and then you've got to, and then it's fight to the death. So, and instead of being 3 cycles, you know, when at the moment you go through, I play my 5 cards, I play my 5 cards, I play my 5 cards to get to the end of the round. With this final boss battle, it can be, if you win, you win, and the game immediately ends. So it's kind of like that final win-loss thing. So I hope people will like that. It's kind of, yeah, it adds that climax that people were missing, which people like. So yeah.
To me, I didn't think of it as so bad because it's a puzzly game. I'm looking at chess back there, and your favorite games tend to be like the Hoplomachus and the Chip Theory, like puzzles, right? And any veteran puzzle player knows you don't Like not every puzzle climaxes. Like sometimes you
Right.
hit that one thing, you figure it out, then you kind of like play out the string. But it's like it was satisfying enough to get to that one thing, like to solve the thing. And if I have to play it out, then what was I going to do at that time anyway? I'm just going to like play it on have a good time. So like as long as there's a satisfying puzzle in the game itself,
It's
then,
an interesting thing because we talk about. I mean, obviously, I play solo games, so I'm very influenced by solo, and I know different. And what I've learned over these past few years of designing Renegade and listening to the feedback is understanding there's lots of different types of gamers.
right.
And I know my game won't appeal to everybody, but as a soloist, and maybe this is something always, is the winning and the losing is not always the thing that means the most to me. Like one of my favorite games is Robinson Crusoe Adventure on the Cursed Island, where winning more often is eludes you anyway, but it doesn't take away the enjoyment. And as a soloist, it's about the journey, right? You know, I know when I'm trying to build that bleeding bonfire, I'm on my way to a defeat, but it's the story that goes along with it.
And you always die in a different and unusual way.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Poison, crocodiles, starvation, cold, piranhas.
Yeah. So when I designed, it wasn't one of my key objectives. You know, one of the key objectives for designing was create drama and create a story. And I think that's really important when you're designing, because I did, let's be fair, I designed it primarily as a solo game. One of the things that wasn't on my checklist was have a great win-loss condition, because it was have a great story, have drama, have a great journey on the way to the end, which is probably why I didn't focus on that climactic end like I should have done for the sake of people who like that. In a multiplayer game, winning and losing is generally what the game's about. You're trying to beat the other person. Co-op games are different because you're winning and losing together and you can enjoy the defeat together. So if you lose, it's more akin to a solo game. You can still enjoy the journey and not take, you don't need the glory of the victory. Obviously you don't, in a multiplayer game, you don't all need to win to enjoy it, because only one person's going to win in a 6-player game. Doesn't mean only one person had fun. But with a solo game, it's more about, the game's got to deliver the experience. In a multiplayer game, there's a lot of the experience of the game can be delivered above the table in just making players interact in different ways. Whereas in a solo game, you're not interacting. You don't have that, like a bidding mechanism is naturally good because it gets players playing with each other. A solo game has to do something different. It has to deliver story, drama, excitement just from raw mechanics, which is very hard to do. So yeah, hang on, I'm rambling again.
Well,
but yeah,
no, I mean, I think
That's a really articulate point.
I mean, I think that leads very well. So we did have a design discussion in mind, and it is specific to solo design, right? So we can definitely lead right into it. We are absolutely, thank you so much for the update on your very fine game, your very fun game, which I play every once in a while. I try to whip it out every once in a while. When I want, like, I always like say, okay, I want to play Mage Knight. I'm not setting all that up. Let me just do a Renegade. Gives me a similar vibe. So, but it is not going to go away. We are going to rebrand it, and we are going to see it again at some point in 2021. So that's very good news.
Yeah.
Okay, so let us turn to our quote unquote design discussion. Fans of the One Stop Co-op Shop will be very familiar with design discussion. I don't know anything about design, so I'm going to try to minimize my input. But Ricky did start to say a lot about solo design and the mindset of solo design, and how solo designers have to come at it with a different set of presuppositions and different goals. Like you said before, like, okay, I have a checklist of what I want. It isn't necessary that what's on the solo checklist will be on the a game that's designed for multiplayer. So I guess I'll begin with Tristan. You mentioned before you designed like your designs tend to be, except for the historical card games, they tend to be solo games designed up, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, all of our games have solo rules. Yeah, for sure.
Well,
it's a big solo gamer. It's super important. I
guess that's a good distinction. Like, okay, there are games with solo rules, but then there are designed for solo games. right? So maybe you can maybe articulate. You're nodding your head, so I assume you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you can articulate the difference, like the different mindset as you approach those two things.
Sure. Well, as a big solo player myself, I love to play solo games, and I think for playtesting your own game, it's a lot more fun if it's a solo game. You know, if it plays well solo, you know, and so that's definitely an early consideration for me in any game design. The only time it wasn't was when I did the history card games, 1066 and 1565. But quickly the community started saying, where are the solo rules, kind of thing. And one of the lads on Board Game Geek, Paul Ibbs, generated a whole solo rule set for it, for how to play against how to play a 2-player card game solo kind of thing. And I was really impressed by it, because whenever I see solo sort of AI rules and flowcharts and things like in GMT games, like in Labyrinth and stuff like that, that always like breaks my head. I'm like, gosh, you know, how crazy, you know, no, in a good way. Like with Labyrinth, it took me about 3 days to learn how to play it. And then it took about another 3 days to learn how to play the solo bot rules as well. And it is very much like almost 2 separate games. And so for me, if a game sort of naturally lends itself to solo, I find that sort of much more natural and much easier in terms of the design process. Like Gloom of Kilforth it's like a role-playing fantasy adventure game for 1 to 4 players, and the scaling is fairly simple. You know, it plays the same way however many players there are, and if it's cooperative, it gets harder because the more players, the more baddies, kind of thing. But any player, that game can be played solo with just 1 character very easily. And same with Veilwraith. It was primarily designed as a solo player game, and then I realized I could scale this out to multiple players. So I get you. I take your point about the difference between solo games specifically and games with solo rules added on. You see that on Kickstarters quite a lot. You know, if we hit the stretch goal, we'll throw in some solo rules.
Solo. There you go.
Yeah. It plays the same way, but you got to score 50 points. You know, and I think people can tell the difference. You know, they can tell if it's been lovingly put together, like the GMT games, like the bots with their incredible flowcharts all over the place, or if it just naturally lends itself to that sort of solo gameplay, and it doesn't have, you know, pages and pages of exceptions, like, oh, if you want to play solo, you can play solo, but you have to do this, so you have to play 3 heroes, or you have to, you know, just ignore all this part of the game and just chuck all that back in the box. And, you know, I definitely prefer not feeling like I've had something taken away, you know, as a solo player. If I buy a game, right, I don't want to think, oh, well, those tiles or that deck of cards or, you know, these characters, those have to go over there. I can't use those for solo play. So I'm definitely rambling as well now.
Well, okay, so we can go back to Ricky, because you originally posed this question, right, about solo design and how solo designers have solo designs want to encourage different, you know, experiences. So like, you know, a solo design will encourage a sense of analysis paralysis. Like, that's the bad way to put it, but like, you know, there's a lot of like soloists, like, you know, what's the number 1 game? Mage Night. What do we like to do in Mage Night? We want to sit there in front of a city for 45 minutes, look at our cards, and, you know, conquer the city, which is a terrible thing to do in a multiplayer scenario. And I'm sure you had a couple of other scenarios that you were playing in your mind as well. So maybe you can articulate what specifically you wanted to address with this question.
Yeah, well, it came to trying to design. I've got a contract for a new game with Triple Ace Games, who are a company in the UK, and it was strange because I primarily designed it as a multiplayer game, and then I'm thinking about, and in my head I'm thinking this is naturally a solo game, but it's that building that checklist, and then I'm trying to understand the differences between a solo and a multiplayer game. And like you said, you identified the term analysis paralysis, and that is a term which is generally used in a negative way. But in a solo game, it's not. It's very much a positive thing. It's like with like I was playing Veilwraith earlier, and Veilwraith is a very fast-paced game. It's a solo game, and you can whip through it. But every now and again, it breaks tempo, and you stop, and you think, what am I going to do now? And you hit that analysis paralysis. paralysis moment, but it's not a bad thing. Those are the moments that the soloists love and cherish, because you're going through the game and you're waiting for that moment where it's building, the tension, and then suddenly, you're hit with this massive problem to solve. And then Veilwraith makes you stop and study it. In a multiplayer game, everyone's like looking at their watch. Come on, mate, it's your turn. Crack it on. But in a solo game, you can get up, you can walk away, you can think, what am I going to do? You can look at your hand, and those are juicy moments. Those are the good moments. You know, you mentioned the chess set sitting behind me. You can sit and study that, and not a piece will move. But it's fun. You're solving, and
you're playing the trees out. You know, like, okay,
you're
down this
moving
path,
over it. And Mage Knight,
potential.
You can sit with your hand, and you can. What am I going to do if I play this or I play that? If I play this, and that's something that solo games can deliver without the negativity of analysis paralysis. And you've got to. And one of the difficult things, and I don't know, is having a game that does play solo and multiplayer, because you've got to balance those things. You've got to give something for the soloist, and you've got to make sure that the multiplayer game keeps flowing along. It's very difficult problems. I mean, one of the other things I was thinking about was balance. And again, we can talk about Veilwraith and how in a multiplayer game, balance is gold dust, because everybody wants to feel that they've been delivered the same fairness, right? You've not won because you got dealt that rank 4 card and I only got the rank 2. Everyone's on a level playing field, but in a solo game, it doesn't matter from, it doesn't matter from one game to the next whether it's a little bit harder or a little bit easier. Maybe for some people it does. But I talked about how solo games want to deliver a story, for example. And when you're reading a book, you don't want to read the same book again and again. You want a different story every time, right? Because that's what you want, and you want that from a solo game too. Every time you play, you want it to tell a different story. So that's really important. And like with Veilwraith, Tristan talked about how when I play the same vignette again, I might get a level 4 fighter, whereas last time I only got a level 2. And in a multiplayer game, you might say, that's not fair. You got a super. In a solo game, it's fine. It's just delivered you a story, a different peak, and a different trough. And I like to see a solo game when you're playing like a wave. And if you balance it too much, that wave gets too flat and it becomes boring. What you want is lots of excitement and drama. You want those peaks and troughs where ups and downs. You want imbalance. At the same time, you don't want to feel that you only won because you got this card, or or whatever. Or a roll of the dice went a different way. But those are dramatic moments in a solo game. They tell a story, and it doesn't really matter if you win or lose. So, I mean, what did you feel when you were designing Veilwraith, Tristan? You must have been aware that every time you play a vignette, it may be a little bit harder or a little bit easier. Did you think about that? How did you feel when you were designing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I still feel it. Even playing the vignettes today, if ever I win, I'm like, oh gosh, I've made that scenario too easy. And if I lose, I'm like, oh gosh, I've made that scenario too hard. What I hope to get to is a point where if I lose, I was this close to winning, or if I won, I was this close to losing. And, in Veilwraith, there's fairly sort of broad stroke measurements for that. If you win a vignette and you've got 20 spirit at the end of it, which is your starting spirit, something's up. And from a design point of view, I would immediately jump on that to bump up the monsters or the threats in that scenario. And yeah, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to have that perfect balance, but you want to get it as close to just generating those dramatic moments where you can go, oh God, if I'd just done this one thing, I could have won, or, oh, thank goodness that card didn't come out. Otherwise I would have lost. And that was hugely important for me designing Veilwraith specifically because, and as Jason mentioned before, you can get away with it more in a game that plays this quickly because if you do lose, you're like, right, okay, just shuffle the cards, off we go again. And if you win, it's, oh, right, I'm on a roll, I'll go on to the next one kind of thing. And I think luckily pulling back the expectations of like the time that you'd spend playing it. You know, if you look at something like Gloom of Kilforth, which can take hours, you know, it's like an evening's gaming kind of thing. It tells quite a detailed narrative as you go through. So there's tons of flavor text. There's all of the game design is based on like adding keywords together to weave a story and to tell a story along the way. Whereas Veilwraith moves at a clip, and there is a story there if you want to pay attention to it, or if you're more of a sort of an abstract player and you just want to solve the puzzle of it, you can do that too. But because it moves so much more quickly, pouncing in on those moments and finding, as I'm playing it now, you know, finding like a vignette that I might think, oh yeah, I definitely raced through that too easily. That sounds an alarm bell for me. But then of course I got to remember, I've played this game 1,000 times. You know, people who are coming in. So I know another guy who's got a pre-production copy, and he was saying to me today, "This game's so hard. How do you win?" You know, and other playtesters have just like walked through it, like the early, you know, the first 5 levels and whatever. So tweaking it and trying to get to that balance and trying to reward people for feeling that they've built their deck in the right way, that they've been able to tackle the threats, is a really it's a noble aspiration, but I don't know if you can ever perfectly achieve it, because even somebody who has that perfect playthrough one time might play it through the next time and just get, you know, wiped out or walk through the game kind of thing. So yeah, it's a hyper consideration. But I was really enjoying what you said about creating those moments of analysis paralysis as well, those tension moments that suddenly ping in where again, sorry to hop on about Veilwraith, but playing through it, you know, sometimes I'm on like automatic pilot and I'm just like, do that, tilt that, you know, put that in there, add the power token, and then flip the next threat, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done what I did last time, because now I've generated a pickle, you know, for myself, and how am I going to get out of this one? And I'm going to have to use combining and playing memories and using action and power tokens and hopefully getting a modicum of that feeling that you have when you play Mage Knight, you know, where you've got the tools to deal with the threat, but it's how do you go about doing it to maximize your turn and follow through next turn, and not just blast all your cards out and take care of that threat and then next turn be absolutely screwed because you've got nothing left to take on the next thing that comes at you. It's a lofty goal, but
it's like in Kilforth. Jason, have you played Shadows of the Kilforth, do you say, or you're going to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, you know, you get the deck of cards, and you might be in the mountains, and in that deck of cards, you know, there's going to be some easy monsters and there's going to be some tough monsters. In a solo game, having all those in a single deck is fine, because you might pull a bad one, you might pull an easy one, right. But as long I get the balance is that they're evenly distributed. In a multiplayer game, you might have to do something different from a design perspective, because if your 2 players are pulling from the same deck, one guy pulls the
dragon, one guy pulls the kobold,
the girl next to you gets the easy monster, you'll go, that wasn't fair. But in a solo game, it's kind of fine, because it creates that that drama and that's and excitement. So you've got, I think, but what's difficult is, what do you do when you're designing a game that has to play both ways, solo and multiplayer? And that's kind of what made me think. I'm like, right. I can't use the same tricks in that I'm used when a multiplayer game, because suddenly analysis paralysis becomes bad, and these swingy things become bad that were good in a solo game.
With regards to the analysis paralysis things, I remember I've been trying to kind of mull it over, and I'm not a designer, but, you know, doing my best. I think a useful thing is to distinguish depth from complexity. So in the sense that, like, depth is what we're talking about. Depth is what that deep experience, like, I'm seeing the decision trees and I'm seeing, you know, this could go here and this could go, like, when you reach that depth point, and that's where you really want to be in a game. And so the question is how you achieve that. And a lot of games achieve it. I think of Mage Knight achieves it with a high level of complexity. Right. So, like, you could be on your 5th, 6th, 10th game and still like, ooh, that's a real, I'm not clear on that. Let me go back to the rule book or something. Let me go back to Ricky Royal's video, which has like 1 million views, because that's the video to go to whenever you want to know the rules. So
you're talking about fire, ice, block here.
Yeah. Right.
I still have to look that up every single time I play Mage Knight. I'm like, fire, ice, block. How?
Right, exactly. So, like, you have terminology, you have like the coalescing of terminology, because if it's separate, it means one thing, but if it's together, it works slightly differently. So I feel like the Mage Knight is able to achieve its depth with a high degree of complexity, and a soloist will, that we're fine, you know, because you're thinking almost on two levels. Like you're thinking of like parsing out the rule and then parsing out what you're doing in your decision space. And I feel like in a multiplayer game, there's less patience, or you can't assume as much patience with the complexity, but you still want to get people to that depth point. So I think I think the idea is that you want to get them as deep as possible with as light a complex barrier as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Or a lighter, you know, so like if there's a choice in your design of like, okay, do I do the more complex or the less complex thing? Maybe if you're leaning multiplayer, do the less complex thing. It may not get you to that truly, you know, rich point of puzzle solving that you want, but you know, maybe so I'm imagining a system of trade-off, if that makes sense.
I guess the other thing you can do in a multiplayer game is if you do deliver those moments where a player is having to think about what they're doing, the other players, they also need to be engaged. So if it's a game like chess here, when you're mulling over what you can do, your opponent can be mulling over what they're going to do next. So in a multiplayer game, you have to present a game state that allows everybody to be engaged at any moment in time, even if someone's taking a long time over their turn. So I think that's the thing to try and to do. If you're going to design a game that is thinky, where people have to think, you need to make sure everyone can think at the same time.
Yeah, you don't want them having like, I know exactly what I'm going to do on my next turn, and it's now 15 minutes till my next turn. So out comes a mobile phone, or you know, and I'm just gonna check out and not be interested in what's happening. You need people to be engaged with the developing state of the game in between their turns. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so how Spirit Island dealt with that, so another like popular soloist game, how that game dealt with that is that they have like a phase where everybody's playing. You're basically playing like you have simultaneous play situation, and then there's that staggered resolution. So like you're kind of like there's different moments of like, okay, we're all involved and we're all doing our thing, and then it's like show and tell. What did you do? You know, like how are you going to affect the board state? Who affects the class?
How did you cock up my move?
Oh, I thought you were going to play that, all that kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm wondering, as a designer, is that a potential solution where you introduce elements of simultaneous play in order to kind of keep that engagement going?
Yeah, I like that idea too, because it means when you're looking for a game to tell a story, the players can help be the tellers of the story because they're all doing stuff over the top of each other. Yeah, that's kind of neat. I'm thinking about designs now.
Yeah.
Get the notepad. It's a really elegant design, Spirit Island, and it does have that like high complexity as well. That's rewarding, as you say, for solo players, but also for multiple players. And the fact that you sort of tee off each other's moves and stuff, I think, is really, really neat. It does it in a way that lots of other games can do, but you're often sort of taking care of your own. Like if I think about Marvel Champions, for example, which is a new one, which I really love the interaction and everything, you're all working together towards the same goal, but you're still very much sort of, this is what I'm doing on my turn. I hope you guys are doing good stuff, you know. And whereas Spirit Island, you can sort of tee off each other a little more with the way that you interact with the island and all the different mini puzzles that each sort of set of conquistadors or cities or towns, you know, gives you, each problem that they present.
I'll give you a +1 damage to your lightning with my fast.
Yeah, I'll make you go fast this turn. You're the slow dude. You're the earth guy or whatever. I'm the nippy lightning guy. I'll make you go fast, and that's going to completely change your game because you'll be like, oh, well, in that case, I'm going to do the epic smash attack or whatever that takes ages normally. Now I'm going to do it before they even get a chance to, you know, before the baddies get a go, kind of thing. So there are some great discussions, but it does dovetail back to what Richard was saying about analysis paralysis, because then you've got analysis paralysis multiplied by the number of players, you know. so that's like it. And it could just be our group, but that's like that's the game for the night if we're going to play Spirit Island, because you are engaged with it for the whole evening.
I guess what you're trying to get is the analysis without the paralysis, right? Like you're trying to, like, and the paralysis to me in my experience, because I guess I'm like Tristan, like I'm very thematic. Like it'll take me 20 minutes to describe like the actual game. I'm too busy telling the story. But like, so where I get the paralysis part is on that complexity. Like if I'm in the rules, and I took Gloom of Kill Forth out, about to film the review, and there was some parts of it where it's like, when does the plot cards come out? When did you know, all that? And, you know, I mean, but like, I mean, you eventually get past that. It's not a complex game, but games also kind of multiply that out, where it's like, this is what's catching me, and I'm not being caught by the decision space. That's the good stuff. I'm being caught by, am I spending too much time interpreting? And as a soloist, I think there's a lot more room to be forgiving of that. Where in a multiplayer, they're more likely to just kind of chuck that at that complexity level, not necessarily at the decision space. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess the only thing you've got going for you with a multiplayer game is that players can help each other out with the rules, and that kind of compensates a little bit. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that before. That's a good point, Jason, that, you know, because getting caught up in just how am I playing the game right is not quite as much fun as how am I playing the game well and trying to win.
Yeah, and that's amplified if in a multiplayer game, certainly. Cooperatively, it's not as bad because you're pulling each other up, but competitively, you know, there's nothing worse than going, someone, oh, you know, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Yeah. Page 16, rule 48 says that you have to lose this skirmish or whatever.
So Tristan, when you did 1066 and then you did 1565, for 1066, forgive me, it felt like the solo rules kind of came a little bit later. But when you did 1565, do you feel that you gave, it feels like the solo rules are a lot more sophisticated, like just the choices that you made in what went on the cards, and I know you tweaked the rules a little bit, but I don't know, I can't put my finger, it just played a little bit sweeter, 1565. Did you, I don't know, designers are thinking more about solo games, but obviously you're naturally a solo game designer. When you've got a third one in the series coming, right?
1815, Scum of the Earth.
Yes.
Has your thinking about how to, because it's the same system, have you changed the way you think about the solo rules in this? Has it evolved in any way, or any lessons that you've learned from the previous two?
Yeah. So first of all, I can't take credit for the solo rules for 1066. Paul Libbs came up with the main design for them. I sort of helped him refine it and stuff, but it's very much his, you know, his work that I worked on. With 1565, by the time 1565 came out, we had a lot of opportunities to work out the nuts and bolts of how it worked and how people responded to the solo abilities and cards. There are a lot more card abilities in 1565 that weren't in 1066. So you had cannons and bold units which can take over enemy cards and, you know, bring them onto their side and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot more ways of interacting with the foe, with the, you know, the AI, the solo bot sort of rules. So certainly 1815 will need to have solo rules that fit in with how people are used to playing it. One of the things I was thinking of is, and I don't know whether this will come about, but I had some ideas about a different take on the solo play, like how I would approach it if I was designing it from the ground up. And it would potentially address one of the criticisms leveled at the solo rules, which is that at the moment, in the early stages, if you're playing on the easier levels, the foe will do sort of very similar actions each round. It will play the lowest cost cards in the deck, and those like a zero cost cards basically. And when you're setting up the game, I almost thought about including some rules saying get all of the zero level, you know, the zero cost cards, shuffle them and stick them on top of the deck because you're going to need those first rather than going through the deck every time to get to them, sort of thing. So I was trying to think about ways to address that and take away the sort of the hassle, you know, of routing through the deck for the cards that you need at that particular moment. And one of the simpler ideas that I came up with was that you don't worry too much about the cost of the cards. It just plays what it plays. And what it means is you could get a 5-cost card coming out very early, but then it will be staggered down the line because you get the 0-cost cards coming out later. And that, I mean, that's a hugely simplified, I don't want to get too much into the details because I haven't finished what I I'm doing with it at the moment. But basically, I want to sort of, again, reduce the barrier to entry and reduce the barrier to play whilst you're playing. I don't want you shuffling the whole deck or surfing through the whole deck and then flipping it over and waiting for it to for the photo reset and stuff. So there are a couple of things that I would potentially change or look at changing. But one thing I'm keenly aware of is there are people that don't like the solo play, and there are a lot of people that really do like the solo rules for both those games. So we'll have to make sure that 1815 definitely caters for the people that do, and maybe have like a variant, this is also how you can play it. But no promises on that, because it might come to nothing given how much I've got on my plate at the moment. But yeah, I was just trying to think of ways that would make it quicker and simpler for people to get into and play.
You mentioned in 5065 the idea of, because you have a lot of cards that specify solo, right? Like
yes.
The card works multiplayer this, but solo this. And I guess I'll ask Ricky, what do you think of that as a solution to some of your issues where, let's say in a solo game, like the solo rules have that whoosh, 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 but then and then the multiplayer card works differently. So like in a solo game, this is a 5 monster, and then in a multiplayer game, it's a 3 monster or something. Is that something that you've addressed, or is that not going to be fruitful?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea, Jason. Because I know, Tristan, you said that when you play a solo game, you want to feel like you're playing the same game as a multiplayer, but I don't think that's always that important. Sometimes games can be interesting when they play differently at different player counts. A 2-player game of Pax Pamir second edition is different to a 3-player and a 4-player. And that's kind of fine. And I think it's kind of fine if a solo game plays different, different player counts can be interesting.
I don't mind so much the idea that it could play differently, but I don't like the idea. I don't want to feel like I can't use parts of the game. Like it's like stuff is being taken away from me as a solo player. Like here, you could have played with this deck of cards, but this deck of cards doesn't work in solo play, which is actually one of the reasons why 1565 has those, rather than like the initial solution was take all these cards out of your deck because they wouldn't work in solo play. And I was like, nah, I can't. I don't want solo players to buy 1066, get the game, and be like, I'll just have to, literally take these cards. Because this one says, look at your opponent's hand, choose 2 cards, and chuck them, sort of thing. I don't want a solo player to either look at the foe's hand, it doesn't actually have one, but, and make those weird choices, or have the foe look at their own hand and make that choice, So that was very much why we added the solo rules on the cards that say, basically, normally the foe would look at your hand, choose 2, and you discard 1. Because you're playing solo, boom, take damage to the wedge or something like that. Wrong puts you a little bit. And it was crucial to me that nothing was taken away from you for being a solo player.
We're psychologically we're a funny bunch of gamers, because you've made a point I think is I would feel the same way. You don't want to lose components, but earlier we were talking about Veilwraith and the deck construction, or Arkham Horror and the deck construction. When you're playing those games, half the game's in the box and you're not playing with it. Like with Veilwraith, you've got this big stack of cards that I've never even played with, because I just won't ever get to build them into my deck. But we don't feel the same way because it's meant to be that way.
Right.
I guess because that's the same.
Later. Yeah.
You will get to them, and if you were playing multiplayer, you would also still get to them at the same rate. You'd still discover them at the same rate. That's if you played all 20 scenarios or whatever. But no, I take your point. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But we are a funny bunch, just like you were saying about how games never complete. But as a gamer, when you buy a game, you want this thing that's in the box to be, you want to know that this is the complete and final version. But, if you buy Sierra Madre games and Lachlan puts his living rules up on a website, that game's it's always evolving. And solo rules as well. I noticed that the solo rules evolve a lot on Eklund games.
So I was thinking about it, this was a question comes up a couple of times in forums and stuff. But are there games that just play as well at all the player counts that are listed in the box, right? So I think of, so it's like Terraforming Mars, right? So Terraforming Mars plays good at 1 because it's a different game at 1. It is, you are beating a high score and you have to do the thing, and I love that. And then and then you get to 2, and it becomes a very different experience. Like now you're going back and forth and blah blah, and then 2, 3, 4, it's because depending on if you're using the drafting and whatever, and then we get to 5, it's like terrible because because you're doing the analysis thing, and people are always thinking of their stuff. And I was thinking about, it's like, are there really games that do all the player counts well, especially if it incorporates the 1, without changing the game? Like giving you a different game at 1. I couldn't think of any. I couldn't think of one that's just like smooth, satisfying at all the player counts.
The only ones I can think of that I love at loads of player counts are not soloable. So like Eclipse, you play that at 2 players or 9 players, it's a brilliant game. 7 Wonders, 2 players or 7 players, anywhere in between, it's a brilliant game. But they're not soloable games, so it's not really, it's here-ness to talk about them in this discussion.
Yeah, it's true.
So are you trying to move a mountain, Ricky?
Yeah, there's only one player count, Jason. You know this.
Yes, I do. I've known it for years.
But no, it's great to see so many discussions about solo rules and it getting more attention, because it is. I think you've summed it up well, Tristan, with it saying it's like an art form, because you are trying to tell a good story, and it's become something, especially this year. I think a lot of people have found solo gaming and found a new way to enjoy board games, and it doesn't have to be, our games the same at different player counts. It's a different experience. Playing a game on your own is a different experience to a multiplayer game. I love playing multiplayer games, but then the people I'm with become more important than the game itself. And I know that sounds strange coming from someone who, I can play a rubbish game with multiple people because sometimes it's just fun to be around people. But when I'm reading a book, I don't want people leaning over my shoulder, and when I'm playing Mage Knight, I want it all to myself. It's a different art form, and I think, it's been a year where lots of people have been discovering it, and it's good to talking to lots of different new people, and lots of people, new subscribers to my channel, and you're doing new things, Jason, and with the top 200 and lots more people voting this year and getting involved in the solo gaming scene. It's good to see people
especially when 15 years ago there was definitely a stigma attached to it. And I used to post up solo rules for all kinds of games like Hero Quest and Space Crusade and all these old games, and I would get like vilified for it, like get some friends, go and play some mates. Why would you play a solo game? And or Descent, Journeys in the Dark. I posted up some solo rules for that. And but why would you play a board game when you play a video game? But it's been really lovely seeing like the explosion of solo gaming as it is now, and especially as you say this year with lockdown and stuff. And in fact, we had a Discord chat with lots of gamers from over the weekend of UK Games Expo this year, because obviously we couldn't meet in person, and listen to some of their stories about how solo gaming helped them and stuff, and going through some people having like really bad situations and really difficult family situations and bereavements and things, and saying how solo gaming helped them get through that, because it's such a distraction. And I always think of this when I'm watching TV, because my mind tends to wander, and unless it's a program I'm completely and utterly engrossed in, which is getting rarer these days, I'm like, I could be playing a game or writing or doing something more stimulating, and playing a board game like occupies so much of your brain space. It takes away a lot of outside worries and outside cares. There's no room for it, because you're thinking about your next move, or you're planning against the next threat or whatever's coming at you, kind of thing. And I can lose, if I get into it, I can lose hours and hours on solo gaming. And Mage Knight, I'm the kind of person who'll finish a game of Mage Knight and go, right, set it up and have another go, and then
no way, never. That's done.
I'm done for the year. But I will do that, and I'll log. I've played that game over 100 times easily, and I'll come up out of the latest game and the sun will be coming up, and I'm like, oh crud, which isn't too bad these days now that I keep my own hours, but it was terrible when I'd have to go to work in an hour's time kind of thing. But it does, it occupies your brain space, and it gives you a feeling of even if you're not designing a game, it gives you that feeling of creativity because you're creating the story of whatever world you're experiencing. Obviously talking about thematic games, which is kind of what well, what all of my games are, but engaging in a story or engaging in a puzzle and just being completely preoccupied by that. And it was really interesting to hear people talking about how it helped them get through these difficult situations because it occupied so much brain space and in a way that reading or passively being entertained by TV just doesn't.
Yeah. And I think and maybe another thing that's come to prominence is people playing online as well with like Tabletopia, tabletop simulator. For me, I don't tend to enjoy those things personally, but I know that's something that a lot of people have been enjoying, and it's been bringing people from all corners of the globe together to play together, which has been really great to see. I'm a very tactile person. I like board games because I like to pick up the pieces and shuffle them about. And that's why I like chip theory games, because it's all about the clanking of the bits.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but and also my computer's rubbish, so I can't play simulator. But it's great. That's something that's been really prominent in this last 6 months or so.
For sure. When game night stopped, I've not seen the lads since I don't think last year now. I moved house last year as well, and it briefly became a weekly online Zoom chat coupled with an online game of Scythe. They've done a really good digital implementation of Scythe on Steam, and we played that 5 or 6 weeks in a row, and until everybody got a bit sick of it, kind of thing. And that evolved. Then one of the guys said, "What if I run a D&D campaign?" And I was like, "Dungeons and Dragons? I've not played role-playing games for 25 years or something." And so ironically, like, I designed Gloom of Kilforth because I couldn't play role-playing games anymore. I didn't have a group. I didn't have the time, and now I'm 6 months into 2 separate Dungeons and Dragons campaigns for the first time since I was a teenager, online. And we play on D&D Beyond. And one of them's my old mates from when I was a teenager who we've all got back together again, and we're playing 2nd edition Dungeons, like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which is like really proper old school. It's got these crazy old clunky rules and stuff.
Thaco, baby.
Thaco, oh my god! And rediscovering that and like just scratching my head all the time. Like, what? And the rule book's hilarious because there's no references or anything. It's like they're that thick, and what you need to know is somewhere in there, and you've just got to read it. You've got to read the whole thing. But then my younger mates have put together a 5th edition AD&D campaign, and so I play 5th edition on Monday nights, 2nd edition on Tuesday nights, and it's brilliant going between the two and seeing how much of a board game kind of thing 5th edition is. Right. All the classes are balanced. If you're a warlock, you're powerful at 1st level. If you're a thief, you can do stuff and all these things. And then playing 2nd edition on Tuesday, it's like, now the thief isn't going to be able to do anything until like 5th level, and the wizard, forget about it until he gets fireball kind of thing. We'll let the warrior do everything for now. But it's been brilliant rediscovering role-playing games for the first time, ironically, without being around people, having to do it online rather than meeting up, which was always my barrier. Was like, oh, we'll never get a group together often enough to play an RPG, and now now I'm playing 2.
What about you, Jason? Have you been doing more online gaming or anything? Not at all.
I'm not. I spend my whole life on Zoom, like because I do psychotherapy and it's all telehealth.
Okay.
So I'm doing this basically all day, and the last thing I want to do is spend, which is ironic because we've spent over an hour talking on Zoom over here.
We've not even got started, Jason.
I know. Or like the last thing I want to do is like staring at something else that's just not a person that I love and cherish. Like, I don't want to solve puzzles. I don't want to I've been reading more actually. I've been reading a lot more. I've been reading, it's like my guy over here does the files and just finished up the Expanse books. Now I'm next week the Brandon Sanderson book, the Stormlight Archive, is coming out with another big fat tome that'll keep me busy. And like firing up the channel, like Tristan was saying, like I will still play a physical solo game. Like that's still like playing through Gloom and Killforth was a pleasure. Not even no bones about it. Like I was playing that, I think it was last night or night before, and it was nice. It was like, okay, I looked up and it was like all of a sudden 2.5 hours were gone because I didn't mind. But the online is tough for me. It really is. As a matter of fact, we're trying to get a Pandemic Legacy Season 0 game together, and I played Season 2 online, and I loved Season 2. I really did. But just playing online, I just felt that distance. I don't get depth when I'm online.
Yeah, and it dovetails back to what Richard was saying about having the actual components. It's a pleasure having playing with the shuffling cards and rolling dice and having the chits and tokens and stuff. Mm-hmm. Just today, a couple more GMT games arrived today. Space Empires and Ancient Civilizations of the Inner Sea. And I spent like an hour just punching out the tokens or bagging them up and stuff. And even that's a pleasure because it's part of the collecting nature. And I think maybe this is because our generation, we had CDs, DVDs, and we collected all those kinds of things. And those are all, they're all on your phone now. So you can't identify who someone is by walking into the room and looking at their music collection because, it's not on display in the same way it was. And I think as, hobbyists want to be able to collect stuff and have things and tactile things, and a lot of that is lost in the digital versions.
Well, it's ironic that I am the person that has to call it and say because I got kids that are about to go to sleep, and it is past midnight over across the pond too, and I hear my I don't know if you guys hear on the video, my daughter is like singing. She's doing something up there. go check in on her. But it has been an absolute pleasure to catch up. This is everything that I thought it was going to be. I hope that we addressed your question in ways, which was fun. And as a matter of fact, moving forward, you are absolutely welcome. Both of you, actually, if you have an interesting question or have something to contribute, please hit me up. I'm going to be doing this, and with different people, different permutations. Like I remember you were on the call with Mike Mullins and Keith Mateka, which people still download and listen to that one because it was about solo variant design and, and it was just 3 different interesting people just talking, so I absolutely want to, keep this going. And so, we're looking forward to the future. Q1 2021, we are getting Veilwraith. Q question mark.
Yeah, very much.
But you do have some
code name Lemonade.
Yes.
But you do have some solo designs coming. You are like solo parts of some other games. Is there anything imminent that we should look out for?
Not imminent. I did one recently for Origin of the Species, which I did off my own back, and the guys really liked it. So they spoke to the publisher about putting that in the next edition. That was really good. If you played that game, it's one of my highlights of the year. Really loved the theme, and putting the solo rules together was great fun. Really enjoyed that. So look out for that one. Yeah.
Nice. And also Tristan has a 18 something Scum of the Earth. What is that?
1815. It's the Battle of Waterloo.
Yes.
Yeah. 1815 Scum of the Earth.
Get the picture of Napoleon. And as usual with Tristan, Hall Nothing Games, art out the yin yang.
Yeah, we're so lucky to have like incredible artists. It's a joy to think of an idea and then have one of these guys make it so much more amazing than it is in my head, kind of thing. Yeah, the games they're very pretty.
That's what I like about your games. It's like I mentioned earlier, I was doing a game with Triple A's. I'm not revealing very much yet because it's early days, but one of the most prominent things about the game will be the artwork, and I'm really looking forward to that because it's not something I can do. And when you watch somebody else translate your ideas into real things and real art that you can see and touch,
make it beautiful.
It makes you smile.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed that shelf story. Thank you so much to Tristan and Ricky for spending their time and sharing about their games and their love of solo gaming. We are not only a solo channel, but it is something that is very near and dear to my heart in particular, and to these gentlemen as well. So thank you very, very much, and we'll see you
Thanks for
around.
all you do, Jason. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Enjoyed it.
Have a good work.
All right, later, everybody.